Hey everybody, Ketwolski here, checking in with another one of our hashtag Star Trek discussions videos. Today we're going to be talking about the very exciting topic of did First Contact reset the Prime timeline? I'm going to go through a couple of different examples of what Star Trek defines as timeline alteration events, and then we're going to go ahead and talk about why I do not subscribe to this particular theory. So let's go ahead and jump right into this. And before we get started in this video, I do want to go ahead and say that we're going to be utilizing alpha canon sources only during this discussion, no beta canon sources for today. Okay, so the first episode I want to talk about is Star Trek TNG's episode Time's Arrow Part 1 and 2. In this two-parter episode, Data's head is discovered on Earth by a bunch of archaeologists. It turns out that his head has been there for hundreds of years, since like the 1800s or something like that, which then prompts, through a bunch of other mumbo-jumbo stuff, prompts the TNG crew to go back in time, deal with Mark Twain, deal with Whoopi Goldberg, who's there for some reason, deal with the Davidians, who are stealing a bunch of neural parasitic energy or whatever from humans, and then eventually Data touches a magical cane and his head explodes off, thus fulfilling the prophecy of Data's head being discovered underneath San Francisco. So what's interesting about this is that this particular timeline event is a self-fulfilling temporal event, in that the TNG crew is introduced to Data's head being discovered in the future by Starfleet archaeologists. They then prompt them to go back in time to stop an alien incursion into the past. Data's head then explodes and lands in the sand where it was discovered at the beginning of the two-parter episodes, thus fulfilling and closing the loop. So that basically means that this temporal event was destined to happen, and it already happened, and it was going to happen again no matter what. So this is a little bit different than an episode I want to talk about from DS9. In this particular episode, Cisco, Bashir, and I think Dax get sent back in time to Earth during, right before World War III broke out, and they're in a location that's kind of like a ghetto-type location, where somebody named Graham Bell is supposed to lead an uprising against this oppressive government that's hoarding people into these essentially ghettos just outside of normal regular cities. What happens, though, is when Cisco and company get there, they are provided with ration cards, and then they get jumped in the streets, and then the actual Graham Bell comes out and tries to protect them, but then he winds up getting killed. In order to prevent timeline contamination, I guess would be the best word, Cisco assumes the identity of Graham Bell in order to allow events that he knows were true from the future to unfold the way that they did, because he did not want to contaminate the timeline. Now, it is fair to say that we don't know for sure 100% that this is how it always happened, and that this was another temporal event, the temporal kind of causality loop that we talked about with the Time's Arrow piece. I think an argument could be made that it always took place the same way. Graham Bell always died, and Cisco was always the Graham Bell that actually caused the riots. But we don't know for sure. So what's interesting about this one in comparison to Time's Arrow is that this one is kind of an approximation, which you kind of see a little bit of, this was just good enough. We knew what the events had to happen. We knew that a guy named Graham Bell needed to do them. We knew how important they were. So no matter what, the important broad strokes of the historical event of the Bell Riots still took place, whether or not it was the actual Graham Bell, or it was Benjamin Sisko. So I think that was the approach that the writers took when they were discussing the plot of Star Trek First Contact. Not necessarily specifically this episode, but that mindset of, well, did this happen this way? Well, we don't know for sure, but what are the broad strokes of First Contact, and how does that unfold? And that'll be understand the difference between the two of things here. So one is like a self-fulfilling temporal event, which is what Data's head was under San Francisco, and then this Bell Riots thing was, yeah, we accidentally caused a potential contamination of the timeline, but we fixed it by making sure the broad stroke event still occurred, and that everything was kind of even keeled out and everything was good to go. So now that we understand those two things, and those are kind of defined out, I want to jump into why I think that Star Trek First Contact did not reset the timeline at all, and why I think that it actually doesn't really matter overall to the effects of Star Trek. So let's jump right into that. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is why people think that Enterprise going back in time and messing with Zefram Cochrane and the Borg being there caused an issue with the timeline to be contaminated. Most people say that because of the way that the ship, the NX-01 Enterprise, looks, that it just doesn't seem right. It's just too much different from that of the TOS bridge and the TOS uniforms and all that stuff like that. that things are just too different. So that's what most people say, that things just look so weird that, of course, the timeline was contaminated. But I'm going to bring up two very big pieces of evidence that actually support the reason that it's not. Number one is what we're looking at right now in an episode of Enterprise where Jonathan Archer is actually reading the commencement speech that Zefram Cochrane did at Princeton. And in that commencement speech, he talks about how aliens from the future attempted to, derail his launch of the Phoenix, and how people from the future helped him defeat them and then still make first contact. So this episode ties the show Enterprise directly into Star Trek First Contact. That, it's basically summarizing exactly what occurred in Star Trek First Contact in this episode of Enterprise. So these two events are linked, so it's good. So we're good up to that point. First Contact happened, the film, and then they founded Starfleet. The Earth's kind of gotten better, and now the events of the Enterprise TV show are taking place. Now I want to go ahead and link it up to TOS, which then of course links it up to the rest of the stuff, and that gets us right into this next episode of Enterprise. In the Enterprise episode, In a Mirror Darkly, where we actually get to see the NX-01 being piloted by the Mirror Universe crew, and everyone's all mean to each other, and Vulcans are slaves, and Andorians are slaves, and all this craziness. During that episode, the evil Jonathan Archer reads the service record that was on board the USS Defiant from the regular Prime timeline. He reads the service record of himself in the regular timeline. So what does he find out? He finds out basically everything we already know from Jonathan Archer from the TV series. So we have this TOS-era ship that has a Starfleet personnel record that encompasses everything that Jonathan Archer completed during the Enterprise show. So it's fair to say that the events of First Contact took place. Earth got better. The show Enterprise occurred, which we know because of Cochrane's commencement speech was tied directly back to the film. And now we know that this ship, the USS Defiant, when it was pulled into the Mirror Universe by the Tholians, contained a personnel file detailing the entire career of the Archer that we all know and love from the show Enterprise, which just basically says that that TOS-era ship, which looks eerily like the Enterprise, same kind of era, has the same information as we had in Enterprise and the same information that was available in Star Trek First Contact. So you can come at this from basically two different perspectives, which is why I'm going to wrap up this in a little lovely bow of conclusion for you. I do want to go ahead and say that this might appear to be a little bit confusing. Time travel plots are confusing all in itself, and I'm basically jumping around multiple different time travel plots right now. So let me go ahead and lay all this out there for you very, very clearly. We have the self-fulfilling temporal event, which was Data's head and the Time Zero thing that we saw. Then we had the Bell Riots piece, where we're not 100% sure if they rewrote history or if they played out events exactly the way that they were. And then we have Star Trek First Contact, where the Enterprise crew goes back in time to stop the Borg and save the flight of the Phoenix in order to ensure that First Contact actually takes place with the Vulcans. Now, you can look at this from two different perspectives, either the temporal causality event thing, or from the best approximation. We may have messed up the timeline, but we did our best and the broad strokes were good. Me personally, I think that the Enterprise went back in time every single event. I think it's another one of those self-fulfilling temporal events where the Enterprise crew, the Enterprise E crew, was always destined to go back in time to assist Zefram Cochrane with getting the Phoenix set up in order to get the timeline going and everything set up that way. It is fair to say there is a good argument that that was only one instance and it did affect the timeline in some way, but overall, the big strokes did happen. Cochrane's ship launched, we had First Contact, the Federation was founded, and everything proceeded as normal after that. So the only two really big takeaways that I think that actually occurred from Star Trek First Contact was Cochrane's commencement speech that referenced aliens from the future helping him out and also trying to stop him. And then we also saw the Borg in Antarctica, an event that had previously never been discussed. And when the TNG crew ran into the Borg during their first voyage, no one's ever heard of this particular race before. No one's ever seen them, which would make no sense because of the fact that Starfleet as a whole has already encountered them. So there would be a record of it somewhere. Maybe somebody would know about it, maybe somebody wouldn't. You can make the argument that it was hundreds of years earlier and that no one on the TNG crew would remember that event, but I'm confident Data would have probably done some research to figure that information out. So it is fair to say that maybe they did. I still don't believe so. I think that that was the way it occurred every single time, but there's definitely merit to that discussion. There's definitely merit to the idea. But anyways, guys and gals, that concludes today's video of Did First Contact Reset the Timeline? I've shared my feelings on it. I don't think that it actually did. I think it was just the normal timeline, but I'm curious to hear what all of you guys and gals think about it. Please throw a comment down below and tell me if you think that First Contact actually reset the timeline, or if it was just normally played out the way it was supposed to be. I'm curious to hear what all of you guys and gals think about it. Please throw a like and a subscribe up on YouTube. Please follow me on Twitter at RealKetwolski. Follow me on Facebook at Facebook.com at RealKetwolski. And I will see you guys next time. Live long and prosper, my Trekkies.